Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. During the November 9th discussion of the City and County Convention Center, members of the joint session sparred over whether to move forward with the plan as a 501c nonprofit or as a capital improvement board. County Council member Jeff McKim stated his preference for the future of the convention center.
First of all, my strong preference is that an expanded convention center be run by a public entity rather than a private one. And right now, the Capital Improvements Board still appears to be the best option for a public owner. Yes, some of the transparency and reporting requirements can be built into the bylaws of a private corporation, but what's the remedy for the public if those requirements are violated? If any member of the public believes that they have evidence that a public body, like the county council, has violated the open door law, they can contact the public access counselor. But what's the remedy for a member of the public with a private nonprofit corporation? I mean, I guess they can file a lawsuit, but that's a pretty high bar. I'd really like to hear the city administration address that issue. How can the public be given protection equivalent to that of a public body? The other point I've heard against a public entity is that the commissioners would get a veto over any bonding, even though the bonding would be done on revenues controlled entirely by the city. And I just don't think that's the way it would need to work. The bonding would only have to go through the commissioners if the revenue source is statutorily directed to the CIB, which it isn't in the case of the food and beverage tax. The city would still be able to bond with their own food and beverage tax and with the city local income tax as a credit enhancement, as they proposed earlier. The city could still bond and have their bond approved by the city council and still use the public entity as a governance model. In fact, from what I see of the powers of a CIB, the city would have to have control of the bonding and would move forward with their own bonding and join in with the CIB for governance of the new as well as the old facility. Now, there clearly is an enthusiasm gap between the city and the county commissioners on moving forward with convention center expansion. I think that's a fact. I understand that concern on the part of the city, but I do think the commissioners' move to create the CIB earlier today demonstrates that they're willing to move forward. I really hope the city takes yes for an answer there.
Mayor John Hamilton said he looks forward to the expansion of the convention center, hoping it becomes a 501c nonprofit. He also expressed concern at what he perceived as a lack of public notice after the county commissioners voted unanimously to create a CIB earlier that day.
Now, I do want to note, I have to just note it was a shock, a surprise move at the 10 a.m. commissioners meeting. There was no notice to any of us about that plan, no sharing of the ordinance, and no real opportunity for public comment. Most of us didn't know what was going. In fact, we called the county attorney this morning and said, "Hey, what is this topic?" And they said, "Well, they don't know, and they'll find out at the meeting, and there's no draft that they had." And so anyway, that was a surprise and, in my view, not very collaborative, but that's okay. We're trying to share all the documents. But I do think I think we agree, the comment was made, let's let the community choose, councils, community choose about what's the best path forward. I think it's kind of fine to have two options with the different views. It's maybe not surprising there are different views about how to go forward because there's been a different view from the beginning. Not everybody agreed with the MOU, which we tried to do. Not everybody agreed with the tax. So it's not a surprise that there are a couple of options of how to go forward. We'll be happy to share more details in the very short weeks ahead about a 3-year process that we are ready to lead and help move forward with a 501c3 to build and open a facility by late 2025. It's basically a 3-year process, at least from when we pull the trigger on moving forward. If the choice that people make to go another direction, we're happy to kind of step back from the administration and step away and let that process go forward, make land available to purchase if that's what's desired, et cetera, et cetera.
County Commissioner Penny Githens pushed back against Mayor Hamilton's comments, saying she believes a CIB would be the best course of action.
I'm a little disturbed by things I just heard. We've offered multiple meetings, Mr. Mayor, and this is the first time you've shown up. So let's stop that. Also, how would we get community input when we don't have an election going on? So we've had a lot of community input. We've had time for community input. what I've heard, and I think I've knocked more doors recently than anybody else in the room, is that people in the community want this done. They're saying, we've paid the taxes for the food and beverage tax. Get off of the dime here. We've got to have something done. With regard to the tort claim issues on a 501c3, I don't understand why a single cent of taxpayer dollars should be used to pay for any kind of liability insurance every year, not just 1 year, but every year, when it's available at no extra cost under a CIB. And when you talk about a sharing of an ordinance today, that really rankles me. There was no sharing of plans for the annexation from your office. There was no sharing of purchase of the Bunga Robertson property when this happened. There's just been a lot of non-sharing from your office. And so please, let's drop those things. Either we're going forward or we're not. And we are really convinced that a CIB is the best way to protect public assets, public tax dollars. And we've been saying this for several years now.
Bloomington City Council member Susan Sandberg said she wants to move forward with the proposal for a CIB because she believes that the process would provide a greater transparency.
Thank you. It has always been my hope that we could do this together, city, council, in cooperation. I knew not about your plans to pass the CIB today, but I'm delighted to hear it, and I'd love to join forces with that effort, because I do agree that a public entity is much more transparent. It's much more accountable to the public, who, as Ms. Githens has pointed out, expects us all to work together, come together, and get on with this in a respectful, cordial manner. So I am convinced this is the right way to go, and I would certainly be happy to discuss any alternatives today. I do want to address this enthusiasm gap too, because we hear this a lot, that they don't want it, we do, therefore we should do this by ourselves. And I think that's been disrespectful, because I'd like to hear from all of you what your true feelings are about this, and is there an enthusiasm gap? Because if there isn't, let's be done with that. Let's stop with the who wants it more, and let's do this together. That's where I'm standing right now, as one of 9 on the city council.
The City and County Convention Center discussion sessions will happen again on an as-needed basis. And we'll have more Cats Week after this message.
I'm at risk of thinking there's just no point in trying. I'm at risk of looking in the mirror and hating what I see.
I'm at risk of regretting what I do, just to join the crowd.
I'm at risk of being told not to tell. And you would never know it by looking at me. But with Girls Inc. in my corner, there for me every day, believing in me,
Showing me what's possible.
I can be strong enough to respect myself and my body, to say I can rather than I can't,
To say no with no apology.
to be a leader, to finish school,
To own my future.
to break the cycle.
Girls Inc. believes every girl can succeed. That's why.
Welcome back to Cats Week. At the Monroe County Public Library Board of Trustees meeting on November 9th, Director Greer Carson informed the board that they are evaluating health insurance options for staff.
As you all know, we've been talking about what we might call total rewards in terms of compensation. We're in the middle of a compensation review, which we haven't done for some time. But what we do every single year is evaluate our health insurance options, take a look at the market when we feel it's appropriate, and see if there are better options out there. And this year, we got a lot of feedback from MCPL staff on what they found rewarding about our current health insurance plan and where we might be able to make some improvements. We considered some of the discussions that we had last November about health insurance when we were looking to renew with SIHO. And we took all of that and did some extensive work, got some bids from the marketplace, thanks to our partners at JA Benefits, of course. We were able to come up with some really good options, and tonight we're going to propose one of those options. I'd like to introduce Becky Throckmorton, our HR Assistant Manager, who's really run point on this project.
HR Assistant Manager Becky Throckmorton informed the board on the work that the managers have done in collaboration with JA Benefits to assess the library's health insurance options.
So back in March and April, we did a full analysis of all of our benefits, and we did some pretty extensive benchmarking with the help of JA Benefits. So we looked at regional, local, and industry data to see how our insurance benefits matched up with those of other providers. So we looked at the premiums that we were receiving from the carrier, the way that we split those premiums with our employees, and made sure that everything was in line there. To recap, because it's been a while since we had that conversation, we discussed that MCPL is covering 100% of the premium for the employee only. This goes above and beyond the benchmark. Our Employee Plus premiums, so Employee Plus spouse, child or children, and family, were well within line with the benchmark data from what we received from the broker or from the carrier, as well as with what we're splitting with the employee. And the place that we were lagging behind on the benchmark was the HSA contribution. Then we gathered staff feedback. So this has been in the form of surveys, both in-house surveys that we have done and surveys that are part of our total rewards salary study with NFP. This data has been very helpful in understanding where our staff needs and concerns are, and have helped us to understand where we're meeting the mark and places that we can make changes to improve and meet those staff needs.
Board member and treasurer David Ferguson said he appreciated the work that they had done, but said he would like to compare the proposed costs to last year's.
And this is great, and I'm happy to know the effort that people went through to make sure the employees would get the best. That's great. But what's it going to cost us like last year compared to this year? I mean, I'm just trying to think of a board level decision. Like, I think management has done a wonderful job going through and finding the best thing for the employee. That's great. I can tell from some of the text that it looks like your proposal or your choice, your selection, your recommendation of Anthem is because good pricing, good network, good company, great. But what is the net?
What's the bottom line?
What's the bottom line to the board?
Yeah.
It's like I could look at this and go, hey, that's great. All right, let's do it. But then I'm kind of catching myself going, what is the amount?
Okay.
Board member Chris Harrison added that they need to consider what the employees want to see, better insurance coverage or pay raises.
Well, and I also think we need to consider as we get to the end of the year and we start looking at possible pay increases for next year. How does this fit in? I mean, if we are picking up more in the health insurance, how's that going to overall impact then the amount we can give in pay raises and things like that? And which one does the employees want to see? Do they want to see more in their pocket, or do they want to see more picked up for health insurance? So those are all things that, we need to consider. And again, I agree with David. There's a lot of great things going on here. But I think just looking at it, how this overall impacts the budget is really an important decision, or an important piece that the board needs to look at.
The board will continue the discussion on health insurance plans at their next meeting on November 16th. At the Monroe County Commissioners meeting on November 9th, the commissioners approved a memorandum of understanding with the Community Foundation of Bloomington and Monroe County for expenses related to their preschool readiness program. County Attorney Jeff Cockrell explained what the MOU is for.
This is a almost housekeeping matter. We have added this to our plan. The county council has appropriated money, and really the work has been done. This is a was a program that was to develop to help pre-kindergarten children enter kindergarten and ameliorate some of the socialization effects of the COVID-19 emergency. This is just the MOU with the community foundation so that we can reimburse them for their expenses.
Thank you so much. Did you want to add anything, Ms. Birdie? Okay, all right. Comments or questions, Commissioner Githens? I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to respond to the lags that we envision young children having because of COVID. And so I'm really proud of being part of a group that would take this on.
Commissioner Lee Jones also commented that she was pleased to see that there are still people working on addressing the consequences of COVID-19 in the community. Commissioner Julie Thomas agreed and said the program was beneficial to the community.
I appreciate that. I do think this is an amazing program, and it was great that this was brought to us, and appreciate that effort. And this has probably had a big impact on our community that we don't even know about. So I'm very happy to support this.
The commissioners approved the MOU unanimously. And we'll have more Cats Week after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
Welcome back to Cats Week. At the Bloomington Utilities Service Board meeting on November 7th, Capital Projects Manager Dan Hudson asked the board to approve an agreement with Building Associates Incorporated for a filter media replacement project at the Monroe Wastewater Treatment Plant. Hudson outlined what the project would include.
I'd like the board to approve an agreement with Building Associates to replace the filter media at the Monroe water treatment plant. That also includes repair of the concrete ceiling, replacement of the lighting, and replacement of the air handling system.
Ex officio board member Jim Sims shared that he is concerned the project could exceed the budget.
And I'll just say I agree with the board member Sherman. That seems like a large cost, and I'm not questioning that because it's probably needed. But what I'm more a little bit concerned with, or not concerned with, interested in, is this bid is also not to exceed. And we've had several that were not to exceed, and then for whatever reason we've exceeded those. So do we have, what is the idea of bids that we have that are not to exceed, but we end up paying more?
City Attorney Chris Wheeler responded.
Every single contract that we enter into, every agreement, every grant agreement, all agreements that the city of Bloomington across the entire city that they enter into are required to say not to exceed. And that requirement is a requirement that the Comptroller's Office has requested of City Legal to make sure that it is in every contract. But that doesn't mean that from time to time, once we get into a project, things that might have been assumed are incorrect or things that we didn't know about pop up, and it becomes necessary for us to amend an agreement and increase the cost by a new not to exceed amount. So that's why sometimes, even though we do agree that it's not to exceed, there are times when we end up amending agreements and going beyond that original cost. And I'll say one last thing. The reason for the not to exceed is to ensure that if we don't like the way something's going, we can simply say no, and we're not going to pay more than what we've already agreed to pay. And we have had situations like that, but this board has never had the benefit of seeing those things because it's never reached the point of being a lawsuit. We've simply told them contractually, you didn't follow the rules, and we're not going to pay you.
The board approved the agreement unanimously. On November 7th, at the Bloomington Board of Public Works meeting, the board approved 2 requests from Gillette General Contractors for street and sidewalk closures from November 8th through April 15th of 2023. Engineering field specialist Paul Kerberg explained which streets and sidewalks would be affected by the closures.
Gillette General Contractors is currently building a new mixed-use development along South Grant Street, just north of East 3rd Street. This is on both the east and west sides of Grant Street. And now that various other city projects have been completed, they're requesting a full street closure as well as adjacent sidewalks along South Grant Street. This is just north of 3rd to the mid-block alley. During these closures, they will be doing a new water main, water service to both buildings, stormwater infrastructure, new curbs and sidewalks, and also resurfacing Grant Street. The closures are requested from November 8th through April 15th of 2023. And in the future, they will have sidewalk closures along East 3rd Street forthcoming. They've sent notifications to the adjacent properties to let them know about the closure.
The board unanimously approved both requests. Later, engineering project manager Sarah Gomez asked the board to approve a contract with Rivertown Construction LLC for the Henderson Street Neighborhood Greenway project.
This project will construct sidewalk, alley apron, curb ramps, pavement markings, and signs and on the west side of Henderson Street between 2nd and Smith Avenue. This project is listed as a high-priority bicycle network connection in the city's transportation plan, and the project provides a connection for the east-west Smith-Hunter Neighborhood Greenway. This is currently not feasible for bicyclists for the connection when traveling eastbound due to the one-way configuration of Henderson. The project will be funded by ARPA, and construction will be in 2023. The northbound traffic lane of Henderson Street from 2nd to Smith Avenue will be closed, and a detour route will be in place on Lincoln to 3rd Street. The sidewalk on the east side of Henderson will remain open for the duration of construction. The project will run for 45 days, and it has a completion date of August 1st, 2023.
Gomez said that out of the 4 bids submitted, Rivertown Construction submitted the lowest and most responsive bid. Journalist Dave Askins asked if the project would create a protected bike lane. Gomez explained that it would not be a protected bike lane, but it would still be a raised bike lane with other measures to ensure bikers' safety.
I'm happy to try to answer the question as much as I can. So this will not be a protected bike lane in the sense of what was just installed on 7th Street, but it will be protected as in there'll be a widened sidewalk for bicyclists to use, and there'll be also a crossing to on Henderson for a safer crossing to Hunter, and then there'll be ramps as well at Hunter to cross over. So it'll basically be kind of a raised bike lane per se, and then it meets back down with the street just south of Hunter, where there'll just be paint markings as the protected portion of the bike lane that's in the street. And that's so that the bicyclists can go north and south on Henderson again, so because, Henderson is a one-way northbound at that point.
The board unanimously agreed to approve the contract. And that is all for Cats Week. Thank you for joining us. For Cats and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.